Good evening! It is Hannah from Smaugish here, and this is the second in my series of reviews of Gothic literature. Today I'm going to do another of the British Library collection of books, and before I get into it, a little reminder, if you like this video, please like it, and remember to hit that subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss out any of the subsequent Gothic literature review videos. And let's get in. As I mentioned in my last one, I am doing a master's degree in September in Gothic literature and sort of the Gothic genre as a whole, and one of the areas that I'm really getting into, and I didn't forget that I used to love it, but I kind of had moved on to different things, is mummy fiction and Victorian Egyptology, Victorian mummy mania, all those kind of things. So the book that I'm going to talk about today is Lost in a Pyramid, which is a collection or anthology of mummy stories selected and edited by Andrew Smith, and again it is a British Library anthology. A lot of these I found really interesting and quite fruitful for potential future academic endeavours. But I will say, with a warning, just with my last one, you've got to remember that these stories were all written at a certain time. So some of the language and some of the ways they treat people indigenous to different countries, Egyptian people or Arabs, it can be quite problematic as a modern reader. But if you come at it from a post-colonial viewpoint and you remember that these are pretty much products of their time, then I think you will be able to read them and digest them a lot easier. So let us start with the stories that I particularly enjoyed. So the first one was the title story, Lost in a Pyramid or the Mummy's Curse, which is by Louisa May Alcott. Fun fact, Louisa May Alcott is the author of Little Women, which is another of my favourite books. And I didn't know that she did mummy fiction. But Lost in a Pyramid, there are ramifications of tomb desecration. So this explorer goes with some friends to explore a lost pyramid, and he and his friend basically get lost. And to survive, they find a mummy, they unroll it, and they use its limbs as firewood. Now I think everyone can realise this is a bad idea. If nothing else, you know, you're desecrating a corpse, but when it comes to an actual story, you can probably all guess what's going to happen. And it doesn't have fateful consequences for them. Oh no, it has fatal consequences for their loved ones, which is even worse in my opinion, that they had to, you know, put up with the consequences of other people's actions. One that was a kind of fun read is called My New Year's Eve Among the Mummies, which is by Grant Allen. And in this one, the narrator finds himself in a once-in-a-millennia party with a load of mummies. Literally, that's exactly what it sounds. He stumbles across this feast and these festivities and this party that a bunch of mummies are having in a tomb, and decides to join in with them. And what's really funny that I think is that he talks to the mummies, but especially this one female mummy that obviously he inevitably falls in love with, about science, philosophy, religion, and how the ancient Egyptian time compares with the modern Victorian day. So I thought that was quite funny, how the author Alan imagines a mummy would take news of Victorian England and things. But, and I quote Dr. Smith here, the tale is playful, but also contrasts the freedoms of the mummy's vivid festivities with the restrictive Victorian world from which our narrator comes. So there is that kind of play on the fact that, you know, these mummies, they don't have the things that they had in the Victorian times, but in a lot of ways they were a lot freer. One that was really, really, really enjoyable and kind of gripping actually is Lot Number 249 by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And if you recognise that name, yes, it's because it is the man that wrote the Sherlock Holmes novels. And this one is quite exciting because it involves a mummy that is enacting revenge and it is enacting the revenge upon its owner. So it's set at Oxford University and follows a young student named Abercrombie Smith, who is a Oxford medical student, and one of his neighbours is Edward Bellingham, who I think is an Egyptologist. I haven't read this in a while, so I can't remember, but I think he's an Egyptologist or an Egyptology student. And he's purchased a mummy at an auction, which is lot 249. And he's not a very popular person. So anytime anyone crosses him or does something wrong, they are, you know, attacked mercilessly. And it transpires that he is sending this mummy inadvertently out to attack them. So the story follows how Abercrombie can possibly stop Edward and his avenging corpse from doing anything else. And actually, it was kind of spooky. I really, really enjoyed that one. It's one of the longest ones in here, but I think it's one of the best. Okay, one that is really interesting for me, especially from an academic perspective and when compared with another of the books, which will be coming up soon, is The Unseen Man Story, which is by Julian Hawthorne. And this one is, you know, a group of friends around the table of a restaurant. And he, the narrator of the story, offers to buy people a meal as long as he or he tells a story to them, as long as he buys them a meal. And there's this central figure called Carigliano, who years before stumbled across this beautiful Egyptian queen's tomb and really wants to find her again. And there's this kind of narrative in this story about is love a curse, obsession, romantic love, destiny, all these kind of things, and reincarnation, which I think is quite common in a lot of especially more modern mummy things. Like, I'm thinking about The Mummy from 1999, which is one of my favourite movies of all time. And, you know, there's the whole thing of Imhotep is trying to find the reincarnated, a reincarnation of his lost love. And he thinks that Rachel Weisz's character, Eve Canahan, is his lost love, basically, is a reincarnation of Anux and Amun. And then the second film, The Scorpion King, The Mummy Returns, Scorpion King was the kind of awful but also amazing spin-off. So yeah, the second film, The Mummy Returns, really goes into this whole reincarnation narrative. So I find it really interesting that The Unseen Man Story, which is from 1893, has this reincarnation and like love never dies, death is only the beginning sort of theme running through it. So that one is really, 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 really good. I would recommend you read that one. Okay, so the last one that I'm going to talk about as one I particularly enjoyed and found really interesting is The Necklace of Dreams, which is by W.G. Peasgood from 1910. So it's also one of the later stories in this collection. And it's a really interesting story that centres on a necklace of an Egyptian magician called Tyre, who used the necklace to kill her enemies, basically. And anyone that wears the necklace have these dreamlike visions and ultimately mysteriously die at the end of the visions and everything. And the archaeologist who is the narrator of the story thinks he's going to be fine because it's just an artifact, and thinks that he'll be able to like take it off before anything happens. So to see what really happens with the visions and everything, he puts the necklace on and finds out that Tyre was trying to use the necklace to use Nitocris under her influence. And Nitocris was an actual Egyptian queen and possibly a murderer. And she actually appears in a lot of mummy literature and mummy stories across Victoriana and Victorian mummy mania. So the fact that it has that figure in it that appears in lots is really interesting. And I like the whole magical element and the necklace and the fact that it has visions, and it kind of allows the writer, allows Peasgood to kind of describe and imagine what ancient Egypt would have been like, because the visions are of things that are happening back in the old days. So yeah, those are the stories I really like. Now there were a few in there that I either found really problematic or kind of boring. A Night with King Pharaoh by the amazingly named Baron Schlippenbach, which is probably a fake name. I hope it's a fake name. And Story of Bellbrow, I believe, and The Mysterious Mummy. These weren't great. And A Night with King Pharaoh especially, I found the kind of one of the central characters, I just couldn't stand him. He was kind of the epitome of British imperialism and, you know, almost a parody of the type of character, so I couldn't take the story seriously. The story was really silly to me. But actually, on a whole, I think this is a really, really good collection, and there are so many more good stories than bad stories, like so many more gems than there are duds in this. So I would really, really recommend this, especially if you've only ever thought of mummies as a film thing, because there is a lot of mummy literature, especially from the Victorian period, because they were obsessed with mummies. It wasn't quite... Well, I guess it was. You know, they used to have mummy unwrapping parties, and they used to have mummies as ornaments and parts of mummies as display and decorations and things. So, you know, they loved mummies, and there is a wealth of mummy literature. And I somehow think that mummies get lost. They're kind of one of the less thought about monsters. Like, we all think vampires, we all think werewolves. Kind of these days we probably think zombies as well. And, you know, Frankenstein's monster is one of those icons of Gothic literature, but I kind of feel sorry for mummies because they kind of get forgotten about. And I love mummies. I love them. I think as a creature, they're fascinating. As I said, The Mummy from 1999 is one of my favourite films. I really like the original Mummy with Boris Karloff, and the really kind of cheesy Hammer horror Mummy, which has Christopher Lee as the mummy character. So yeah, I really, really recommend this. As before, this is a British Library book. I believe I bought this at the British Library, but you can certainly find it on Amazon pretty easily. And the British Library have a whole collection of different anthologies. And as I said in my last review video, I think anthologies are a great way to go, especially if it's a genre or a type of story that you don't really know much about. Because Andrew Smith and Eleanor Dobson, in my Werewolves Silver Bullets review, they kind of mention other stories that are like it or influenced it, so you know where else to go, which I really like. So yeah, I recommend this. It was a great read, and some of the stories were genuinely chilling, which is quite rare for me. So definitely give this a read. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know down below if you like mummies, because I really like mummies. And let me know what you thought of the video. And yes, I will see you in my next one. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.